Hey, how are you? Welcome to Request. I'm your host, Michael Kiernan, and I'll bring you insights from real estate experts and industry leaders along our communal journey to aligning real estate operations and technology. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Lloyd Fehily, a forward-thinking resident manager, and Lindsay Liu, co-founder of Super, an AI solutions provider serving the HOA, multifamily, and residential sectors. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, welcome.
Hey guys.
Lindsay and Lloyd, thanks for being here. How are you both today?
Doing
Good.
well. Good to see you.
Beautiful day here in New York as well.
Yeah, and Lindsay
Doing
was
well.
saying the same out west.
Oh, yeah. Always beautiful. Every day is the same.
Well, excellent. Why don't we get started? Lloyd, can you give us a bit about your background and how you became a resident manager?
Yeah, sure. I actually got into the industry by accident. A friend of mine had some property, was helping them take care of that. I was introduced to somebody who ran green buildings in Battery Park. So I was just thrown in at the deep end, working the front desk. He was a very forward-thinking resident manager, very tech, technology savvy. It was the first green residential green building in the US, so it was a lot to learn very quickly. In my first week there, I think it was my second day. Had me tour this Dutch film crew around the building and explain to them exactly how a green building worked and the gray water plant and everything. And probably made 90% of it up, but I got through it. But it was a lot to learn. It was a great experience. From there, I started working for a company called Gotham, who developed a lot of the rental properties in New York City. Lucky enough to open a building for them in Midtown West, called Gotham West. It was 4 properties, all in one sort of community. They had a huge facility, Gotham Market, and then I had a staff of about 35. And from there, went on to like newer buildings, opening a few new buildings, and wound up in this building downtown. It's been great though, good experience.
What's been what was your biggest challenge when you were coming up and kind of the hardest lessons to learn?
The greatest challenge for a new resident manager is somebody to give you a shot, to give you, it's hard to build your experience. Everybody wants to hire somebody with so many years experience or different scenarios or backgrounds. So once you get that first shot, you just have to make the most of it and just make your mark. And it's winning over the staff. And fortunately, when you open buildings, you get to pick your staff. And that's one of the best things about opening a building. And something I've always told people, when you are opening a building, like what's the first thing I do is like go find your staff. You will start your building. You should be interviewing 60 people to 100 people, maybe even more. You'll whittle that down to whatever your numbers are. And guess what? After you hire them, 50% of those guys are going to leave in 6 months. So you really have to search far and wide. And it's as simple as going to your local Starbucks. You meet the friendly. Oh, well, that's going to be a great concierge here. Things like that. Just identifying people who are strong people, pleasers, and.
So did that really happen to you in 6 months? You lost half your staff?
Yeah. So quick thing, when you're doing tours with your staff, you're walking around, you give everybody a pen and a notepad. Whoever's not taking notes won't be with you in 6 months. So yeah, so it's just experience over time. You can really tell there's a big difference, I guess, between people who are looking for a job and people who are looking to work, and you just find that over time. And
so that's what you found out. The people that didn't pay attention were just looking for a paycheck and weren't willing to put the work in.
Yeah, look, sometimes it's through no fault of theirs. It's just a stopgap for some people where they're just maybe out of college, figure out what they want to do, and then you run the gauntlet all the way up to people who are retiring and don't need that much money. They just need the benefits, and they've secured their retirement, and so all between there. But it's luckily for me, I'm fortunate enough. I think I'm good enough with finding talent, and it's up to them whether they stay, but they have to meet you halfway. They have to be sort of into it, and you try and get them excited about the industry and the business and the potential of where they can go as well. We can get into it, but there's a whole lot of avenues for training and advancement for them.
Right. And you through your local union, there's training, and then outside of it as well.
Yeah, you can go private or, through local 32BJ. There's a whole range of classes you can take. They also have career tracks where you can get in the handyman track or the resident manager track. But anybody who's been a super or resident manager usually have started out that way. So it is important to know how to mop a floor or how many 1,000 square feet you should be able to clean within an 8-hour period, and knowing where each person should be at all times. It's one of those things that looks easy when somebody's good at it, but if they're not good at it, it looks pretty shabby.
Well, managing people has to be the hardest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, it definitely is, but I think 90% of that is at the hiring. If you're fortunate enough to do the hiring yourself, sometimes you inherit the staff, and they have to run an agenda. Maybe they're in a building where they're on their 4th resident manager, and they're just beaten up by everything and different priorities for different guys. And it's you just work with them individually and try and win them over, get them back on track.
And how do you do that?
I like to meet with them individually and hold them accountable, just call them out and just say, look, this is an issue, and this is how you've been performing, and this is what I need you to do to correct it. And you never really want to go the route of punishing or writing up, suspending. That's really the last resort. You really try to do it, through positive reinforcement, I guess.
So a bit more coaching than the carrot and the stick, right?
Yeah, but again, they have to want it. They have to, apologize for when they realize they're slipping or actually want it. If they don't care, then you just have to move them on very quickly. And that goes for every industry, they say hire slow, fire fast.
Ouch. Lindsay, tell us a bit about you and your story.
Sure. Yeah. So I think also have a little bit of a roundabout way into real estate. I feel like that's most people, right? Landing in the industry. There's not really a set of courses, although I think maybe now today there are a bunch of people that teach you how to like flip homes and do all of that. But I've been in the technology industry my entire career, so kind of building and launching and improving products for people through kind of a software lens. But I've also been investing in real estate. I've just been very passionate about the asset class and believe that it is actually a path to real kind of financial freedom. And it's an asset that you have a lot of control over, much more control than like the stock market, for instance, right? And so have been a big believer in that. Started working my way up through kind of, investments in individual condo units, and then now have some multifamily, manufactured housing, commercial. We've got some single family rentals in the portfolio as well. So I've kind of seen a bunch of different kind of types of management needs. And across the board, I think what's continued to come up, and one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this topic as well, is communications has just been a constant kind of pain point, and seeing it through, both the kind of properties we manage as well as through others that are managed through third parties. It's the most manual and most kind of contentious friction point between owners, tenants, and the people taking care of the properties as well. So that's what we focus on at Super is building AI tooling to help streamline communications, to automate as much of that as possible, create more transparency, and improve the responsiveness of staff as well.
Say more about creating the transparency.
Yeah, I think, for communications today, a lot of it ends up in either an individual's kind of, let's say, their inbox, right? Whether that's an email inbox, their voicemail box, their text messaging, right? There's a lot of places where that communication trail becomes very one-to-one, which makes sense, right? in the industry. You often need to reach an individual person for an individual type of issue. But that makes it difficult when you have, and especially in like, buildings, the kind of scale of operations like Lloyd's, right? Where you have multiple people that are collaborating on things. Now you have information that is only shared with one or two people. Or I'm sure, Lloyd, you'll have an example as well where, let's say a tenant tells you something, a resident tells you something. Now that information is with one person. They need to remember to kind of create the paper trail, right, for that to go and tell the appropriate people, leave notes, make sure that gets followed up on and actioned. So I think what we've seen is that without having some automations in place to preserve all of that and make it visible to teams, it sometimes can break down along the way.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, so transparency amongst the operating staff as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Got it. That makes sense. So, Lloyd, can you tell us a bit about your current property, just general terms of the kind of property that you're there, and a little bit about your clientele?
Yeah. It's a building downtown. Won't share the address, but downtown, it's what they call like one of the newer developments. Clientele, very sophisticated, younger folks who, definitely are into what we're talking about today and big on communication. It's very, very different to your Upper East Side or your Upper West Side legacy buildings. It's very, very new, very technology driven, and like I said, it's very sophisticated people. You really have to be on point with the message you're delivering, how you receive theirs and transfer it. A lot of in between, between assistants, people who work for them, and you're just trying to, filter all of this information and curate it and send it all out to where it should go properly, depending on the situation.
As you were painting that picture, I was following because we're New Yorkers. So I was wondering for people that aren't, like I was actually following, right, your downtown. I can picture kind of loft space, and then the Upper East Side more so, and then the Upper West Side is different.
Yeah.
Guess that's kind of the best way to describe it. Like you said, it's a multifamily property that you have, converted space. So it's somebody that was forward thinking when they were building it and marketing it, and the people that adopted or moved in and bought units. Is it a condominium?
Yeah, it's a condo. So again, getting away from the co-ops of the Upper East Side or West. I know there's condos up there, but downtown I think would be more condos.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very marketed towards privacy, and that's where a lot of people. It's a very nondescript looking property. If you're to walk, you could miss it if you walk by, and it's very deliberate. It's also in a landmarked area, so that is also you're not going to be able to make too many changes to the exterior. But it's smart, sophisticated people who value their privacy, and so the staff we try to hire for that. I have a staff of around 20. We have a valet team, park cars and whatnot, and go retrieve cars for people. So again, with your sophisticated clientele, you're hiring staff that can cater towards that. Sort of have any sort of scenario thrown at them, and they're good with it and can run with it while respecting somebody's privacy.
Well, so that's interesting that you have you said valet, so valet parking. So you have a parking arm to your operations, right, to the multifamily unit. And is it open to the public, or are you just managing that?
No, it's resident only, and the valet work for us, and it's people own spots, or we'll also do a program where if somebody has a rental spot within the area, walking distance, we'll go retrieve the car for them with enough notice. If they want it outside on Friday morning, 9 a.m., then the car will be there ready. Okay.
That's really nice. How do you manage that? What tools do you use?
Good team as well, and good calendar, but just basically over communicating. We have a good tech system. The guys we're using Super for internal communications. We do want to roll it out building wide because, again, something I'm sure we'll get into shortly, but I'm a big fan of removing friction from management, and it should be as simple as a resident should be able to send a text and forget all about it. And then we, in the background, go take care of everything. So, for example, if it's something's, a resident wants to book the party space for Sunday at 9 a, or 1 p.m., let's say, they're having balloons delivered at 11, caterers will be here at 12, whatever it is. There's a lot that needs to happen on our end to make sure that happens, because a lot of it will fall through the cracks. There's several people working between now and Sunday. It's the game of telephone where you're relying on the first person who receives the message to receive it properly and convey that message properly to everybody else. Sometimes there's scenarios where it's like, hey, it's a surprise party. Make sure, now you're telling us nobody knows about this party. Make sure, if their husband doesn't find out about it, it's his surprise 50th or whatever. So you're just really doubling down on that to make sure that each of the steps are met. And if it's done well, then on Sunday, I'm not sweating about, is this in place? Is this ready? So to that, if it's, for example, the roof space, it's like, all right, well, not just a party, but there should be something in place where that the roof gets checked, it's cleaned before, it's cleaned after, it's checked throughout, and just so that, you don't have to work 7 days a week or manage every scenario in the building, where you can trust your staff to do it.
I heard a bunch of stuff. Like, if you don't mind, if we could break this down. So what I heard is you're using Super to manage communications, which included parking and parking requests.
Yeah, so we what we like to do is take it via text message, and then we'll put it on our calendar. So from there, the person on duty has to go, locate the garage that they're parked in, for example, and get them notice 2 hours before it happens. So constant reminders and checks and everything. Last thing I want to see is 25 Post-its all over the guy's desk. You're like, we need one system in place, and that's a calendar.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood. So does your property have a garage attached to it, or?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Well, we do it with both. We have our little garage where certain spots are owned by residents, and then we partner with several outside garages. The deal is that the resident has to have a monthly spot with them, and it's a 5-minute walk for the valet to go retrieve the car.
And you use Super to communicate both, so resident to your team?
Yeah, resident will usually send me or the valet an email directly, and then we manage it internally with the platform.
Let's talk about that flow. How does it get into Super? And Lindsay, chime in.
Yeah, I'll let Lindsay talk about how it probably ought to work, but we are manually inputting it. I believe that the building through Super also has our own cell number, so people can text, and that's the way we're trying to go with it. Just shoot off one text, and we'll take care of the rest.
So while you're onboarding people, you're fairly new to using Super?
Yeah, I think we signed up earlier this year. Maybe late last year, but we've been slow to roll it out because, again, we're trying to move away from those legacy platforms and just try and get this as our system. I basically want to run my life with my cell phone, and the more I can do that, the better.
Okay, so you're slow rolling this out, so you haven't fully. Clearly, you're not mandating it, right? You're not going to mandate it to your clients.
Right. So there's certain people have the cell number. We're seeing how it feels. We want to make sure they get our messages back, and all of this. So far, so good. And then we're trying to, there's certain things that we need the other platform for. So it's sort of a bit of both. But for me, it's the ultimate communication tool. And obviously, Lindsay can speak better to that.
Michael, I can quickly chime in there as well, which is, our goal and kind of what we've been talking to Lloyd and his team about, and most of our customers, is how do we get your residents away from having to be told they need to log in to a platform to make a request, right? And I think the minute that friction happens, people don't do it. If they have your personal email, if they have your personal cell phone number, they're going to go there first before they go and they have to go and remember their password or reset their password, just to be able to go make that simple type of request, right? So From Super's perspective, our goal is to make it that simple, right? You want to call, you want to text, you want to shoot off an email. We allow for that. That then gets centralized and we can create automations around that. Our AI is even able to answer and field a whole live phone call as well. So if somebody has questions about what hours an amenity is open from, if we have that information, they can answer. All of that, take that message, route it to the right person on the team. So from our perspective, we think that communication should just be as natural as possible. What happens for the management team side is everything is logged, right? It is then kind of stored in a way that it can be actioned on, it can be assigned to the right person. You can loop in other team members so they have visibility. And so we're trying to kind of marry the kind of more dynamic experience that a resident expects with the more structured experience that the management team needs in order to kind of make sure all of these pieces are tracked and taken care of.
Okay. And does the Super help folks like Lloyd to bring their residents on board?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we've realized every building is its own little ecosystem, right? And they're going to be very specific about how they want to introduce something new. And obviously, change management is change management, right? There's work associated with any sort of change. So for some of the organizations that we work with, we try to do it as much behind the scenes as possible. So for instance, if you have an existing phone line, maybe forward that phone line to the phone number that we have. You don't even need to tell people there's another phone number involved, right? For some organizations, they want a fresh start. We can help send a notice out to all of the residents saying, hey, here's the new 24/7 set of information that can help you with X, Y, and Z, right? And then for others, there's some hybrid rollout that we can do along those lines. So, we try to be as respectful of kind of what the optimal workflow is, because I think to the other theme of this conversations, the internal operations is a big lift, right, for these properties to make everything function well. You have to make sure. I always think like, the optimal goal for us as a tool is it shouldn't be the tail wagging the dog. It shouldn't be the tool telling you how to do the work. It should be the other way around, right? And the tool is meeting you where you are. So those are the kinds of things that we at least aspire to deliver for our customers.
Okay. So is it fair to say Super kind of enables a kind of a centralized communication pipeline from residents to the operations team and to the appropriate person on the operations team? And I know that you also have from education is like it takes actions based upon the communication and the words and the language. And is it also fair to call Super an agentic provider?
Yes, that's right. So we've basically created verticalized agents through AI that they understand the world of property management, right? So that's kind of the first thing, is they understand that there are properties, and those properties may have units, and those units have owners as well as residents, right, that might reside or be associated with it. So there's kind of a whole world, I think, that you need to feed any of this technology to understand, just like you would an employee. And I think that's just one of the things that I always think about. It's like, it should feel like you're training a person, right? That's on your team, right? When you bring somebody on, you have to explain to them what is the community that we have, what are our rules, what are our procedures and policies. So training it like that. As far as the types of things that we can enable, I think, it's almost like if you think of it as a funnel, right, where you're centralizing all of these communications. And then on the other side of it, it's basically then figuring out who now needs to know about this. And so we can then also do things like understand this is a maintenance request that should go to the maintenance team. This is a valet request that should go to the valet team. And so we can actually then decide who needs to be notified about it, so that you have more efficiency within the team instead of everybody looking at every single email or text that comes through, right? Only the people that's relevant to need to pay attention to that.
That sounds great. So Lloyd, what's when you said you're manually entering it into Super, so good that it's getting in there, but how are you doing that? Are you forwarding the email?
Yeah, so concierge, we're all using the system. So as long as the message has been delivered to us, we take it from there, create the calendar event,
Mhm.
add it in there, and then we just follow up with each other to make sure everything is getting taken care of. I mean, to to Lindsay's point, it really is a great point. Where what I like about Super was that it was born from the solution was needed, and it wasn't that the product was invented and now let's just go and sell it, because it filled the gaps of other products, and it also didn't include a lot of the noise that I don't need. So as a manager, there's a lot of products out there we can use. I mean, you probably know all of them yourself, Michael. Between MRI, you've got building engines, you've got very high-end versions of like AVS. You've got things that are just overkill for what you need. So this strips it all down, and it's as simple as, I mean, Super has the ability to. I think you used to be able to do polls on it at least. So I mean, one of the things I've seen in with this is sometimes it's hard to get, you're bored to find a date to do something. So it's 12, 15, 20 something emails later, and your property manager would follow up. What date is it? I'm like, I don't even know. I have to go check through all these emails. Oh, they finally decided on this date. And that's time that for all of them as well. I mean, these are a board in a condo or co-op are volunteering their time, and they're all very busy, successful people. The last thing you want to drag them downward is a 27 email chain that you're not even sure if it was resolved. So you can funnel all that through Super and just get it like resolved pretty quickly. It's hard to move over. People are still on emails, and
Oh,
the inefficiency of that will always exist. But at least on the back end, at least for us, we can move things along very quickly.
so how is that addressed, Lindsay? I mean, you've got a
Yeah.
phone number, but how do you address that with Super?
So for emails, I think I think I have a point of view here, which is it's going to take a long time for email to go away. It is just so right, like for many of us, and maybe with future generations that starts to shift, but for many of us, that is where the work gets done, and especially for board members, right, people that are busy professionals in the rest of their lives, it's the easiest way for them to kind of have a space where they can communicate. I remember, I've been on 3 boards through the different kind of properties I've been in. And I used to give the example to my team of like, here's an example of an email chain that's 127 emails long, right? It spans 8 months, one topic all the way through. And now we're on like, a totally different topic. And then at the very end of the email, there's one example I gave, where the last one was me saying, did anyone schedule this? No responses. Right. And I think that's just that is something that's a really hard behavior to shift away from. So our point of view at Super is we don't want to tell people what communication tools they should use, as long as there is a way to organize it, keep track of it, and make sure there's an accountability trail for that, right? And I think that's kind of the way that we think about this is you're not going to be as successful if you force people to say you need to adopt this brand new thing. If people have been using email for 20 something years, it's how they've managed their entire board, right? Previously was all through email. If we take that away from them, it's going to be a big jump and you might not be successful there. But if you allow them to use that, but you pair that with the ability to have more efficiency on the operational side, then you might have a winning combination there. So that's kind of how we think about it, is we're not trying to displace the things that people love already.
So say more about that. Like I'm trying to
Mhm.
envision an email comes through. You mentioned that a phone number is included in, and then you just
Mhm.
forward to that number. Is there not an email so if something comes in, could it be forwarded to the
Yeah,
email?
there is also an email pipeline that we have. So essentially, we can
Okay.
cover with capturing emails, we can capture phone calls and text messages as well. And so that allows for whatever communication people prefer to be leveraged there, and then you have that centralized and tracked on the back end. Mhm.
Got it.
But
So,
more and more, we're kind of, our mindset is no one should ever have to log into anything, especially residents, right? Residents should never have to log into anything in order to make their request, to get a response. You should just be able to get an email notification if that's what you want. You get a text follow-up if that's what you prefer. And you can kind of continue to have the communication there.
cool. That makes sense. So Lloyd, I'm going back in my head where you said you had a sophisticated, building. Have you tried to gently nudge them to, adopting different means of communication?
Yeah, they're very much on board. I mean, first and foremost, it's security focused. So that's where things are sort of headed right now. The communication is there. It's definitely on point, but our frustration as operators come from the operational side. So, for example, I mean, I'll go to, every good super's checking all of their mechanicals every single day, right? So
Mhm.
if you just walk through the different technologies that you have, you say you check your BMS, you get an alert that there's something wrong with a pump. Walk up to your boiler room, your chiller room, whatever it is. All right. So that was one technology. Now you'll pull out your rounds technology, another app to say, all right, pump is VFD fault, is low voltage, whatever it is. You type that in, and then I'm going to close that out and go into another app and create a work order. Now, because of the app that I'm using with that legacy platform, a lot of their emails get caught up in spam folders and whatnot. It's been an issue. So I'm now texting my engineer to say, hey, I just put in a work order for this pump. Did you get it? I just want to make sure we deal with this today and whatnot. So that's 4 different technologies that I've now used to convey one message about one little thing. So that stacks throughout the day, and you're finding yourself that if you don't have the right devices, the right tools in place, you're just doubling up on your effort and texting to find out if the thing was done. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just kind of stuck on, the adoption and what would it take to get better adoption from your residents?
I would say adoption. They're very open. They're very open-minded. I mean, the handcuffs for a building manager would really be the property management company you're tied to may have this platform, whatever you're using, rolled out across their 300 building portfolio, and that you might find more friction there than you would on the individual building because they just
Oh,
want
yeah,
to run
yeah.
well.
Yeah, I was just stuck on you having to manually send an email. So I'll just maybe just move on from it. That's where I was stuck. So,
Right.
well, let's just talk about like the focus of everything you meant, because like what I just envision you saying is you've got a property management, PMS system, right? That's kind of your
Yep.
baseline, and that takes care. It might have your all the financials for all of your residents, the ledgers. You've got your work orders, and you may have other elements too if people use construction and stuff, but that's kind of the baseline, and that sort of thing is necessary because Lindsay's Super is a communication tool that is taking requests and kind of, I mean, one of the things that you called it, right, is kind of an AI call center, is right. You're dispatching people to where they need, or requests to where they need to go, so it's seamless for the end user. I think you're always going to need the PMS, Lloyd. Your front desk concierge piece that you're talking about is what you're referring to, I think, as the legacy. I absolutely can see what you would want to use Lindsay's Super product to move on from that. Yeah, when you got a legacy system that it's got great for package tracking, pretty good at broadcast announcements, and pretty good at residents being able to have a community and that sort of thing. There's benefits to that, but if it hasn't moved forward since the product was released, and it doesn't have the intelligence, right? The AI intelligence that Lindsay's product does. To me, it makes absolutely sense why you'd want to move away from it, especially because Lindsay, you have package tracking as well. I feel like I'm doing a Lindsay commercial.
We can move on if you want.
No.
Yeah, you know, I think there's just so many exciting applications of AI. So we can do kind of image scanning, right? To be able to read a label, be able to understand who that label is for, match it to a resident, right? But there's, you know, there's a lot of really exciting things in the pipeline there. And I think just to build on the point that you were making, Michael, is that, you know, when you're dealing with, I think in this space specifically, there is a lot of legacy technology, even the property management and the accounting systems, right? Those systems of record, you know, we're talking about technology that's built on top of architecture and frameworks that might be 20 plus years old, if not older than that. And so, you know, I think the speed of innovation and change is really going to be it's going to be you know, hampered by the fact that they have to deal with the infrastructure that they have in place, but also the understanding that their customers are used to using one thing, right? I give this example a lot, which is like the Amazon product page, right? The one where you go and you buy everything. That's the page that they make the most money on. It's probably one of the most profitable pages on the internet, right? It's been around in that design style for many years. And if you talk to people in e-commerce, you know, e-commerce technology experts, they would say there's plenty of other ways you could optimize this page. You can make it look a lot nicer, right? But here's the thing: people know exactly where to go to press that buy button. And so it becomes very difficult when you have a legacy technology to implement change as a result, because you're like, oh man, if I change that one thing, then everything's going to plummet for a bit. And for me to take that risk is not worth it, right? Everybody knows where to go to log in to this thing. I can't change that. And so I think there's both kind of behavioral change as well as kind of technology debt that these companies have to buy back. I think what's so interesting about this moment right now is I talked to, you know, a number of people about this concept of like, there's an old world and there's a new world for what's happening with AI. And the old world is a different type of mindset around how you even build tooling for people. In this new world, we can really unlock, we can just imagine more around how we want to accomplish things. And with the possibilities with AI, something that, you know, I may have said a year and a half ago, that building some of the routing logic that we're doing as far as who to make sure that a call gets routed to based on the content of that call would have been a 2-year project to get done. You'd be like, just that one feature alone is so much engineering effort, so much time and energy to just make sure it happens right. In this new world, you can actually use the intelligence of AI and actually build something that's maybe 80% there in days and weeks, right? It's the fine tuning, it's getting it to 100%, right? That takes a lot of time and energy as well to continue to make that better. But you could get to something that's pretty fair fidelity very quickly. What you need to really have the curiosity and the creativity to think about how to build things in a different way. So it's a very interesting time, I think, all to say, where I think we're going to see a lot of new tools coming out, and the haves and have-nots from a technology innovation perspective I think the gap is only going to feel wider.
Yeah, but I think what hasn't changed, and Lloyd, feel free to jump in, is I think, you know, to me, we're all in the service industry, and having been, you know, my entire career in the service industry, the majority of the last bit of it in the real estate and hospitality industry, is all roads lead to great customer care. So rate your product. The reason it's good is it makes it easier for the client to use. Great. I do think that there are PMSs that are out there that are forward thinking and do have some AI. I'm not going to, you know, broad strokes on any of that. But I'll go down this so far, Lindsay, to say is, you know, it all comes down to data, right? And we all need the data, and it all needs to be aggregated, and you're channeling a lot of it is great, but it's where it goes from super and then either into a PMS or into some sort of aggregated data management, like, you know, Cherry or something like that. That has to happen so that down the road, as things get better and better, and AI is leveraged for predictive maintenance, so that Lloyd doesn't have those 3 a.m. the stack, you know, backed up. There was prediction that there's been some clogs, and let's get on that. So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox for a sec. And Lloyd, I want to know from you, how did you come to know of Super and Lindsay, and how did that come about?
I'm actually forgetting how
I was like, I can't remember. Do you remember?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm always following. I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm always following what people are doing, and met Lindsay earlier on. I was like, oh, she's very smart, and this product is very smart, and it's just excited. So not just a user, but a fan, is to see where she goes with this, and where the company goes with this, and what her other things she'll do with it. It's there's a great community of people who are involved in the industry and trying to make it better, and not trying to reinvent the wheel, but like, how do we make it more seamless? And Lindsay's in that category for sure. But I've had my own little frustrations. I've been in the industry a little while now, nearly 20 years, and
Mhm.
certain things haven't changed and certain things have. And you're like, how can we have this one industry that is, as a whole industry that's competitive with the entire stock market, right? And on that level, but the efficiencies still aren't there in the sense operationally. I mean, we talked about several overlapping software things. For you mentioned accounting earlier, and billing. Those are two different softwares that I don't even see or use. I'm on the operational side, and then I'm on the engineering side, and none of these things talk to each other. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's a miss. But I guess my question to you is, okay, so you guys don't remember how you met, but it was definitely you took ownership, and you were the person who Lloyd, who said, you know what, I've got these pain points where I don't have,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
great communication. So say more about that.
Yeah. So Lindsay's background was, as she mentioned, was operations and frustration as an investor, and those are the people you want to talk to. It's if you're dealing with people who are inventing product. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've met several people who invented products for the industry that it just made no sense. So I was like, where? Why did you come up with this? Who did you talk to? Why did you spend God knows how much money on this, but the amount of hours that you did, I was like, these are the three reasons why it won't work. And you only need one. Is because you overlooked the privacy feature of this. No, I can't give out any phone numbers from this building. And the product required their interaction with the product. So like, that was a huge oversight on your behalf. So again, it comes back to people inventing products to solve problems, or people inventing products to sell. The industry is there. Let's just throw it out there and see what happens. And the people who are in tune with that are the ones who are going to succeed. I mean, getting back to our communication thing earlier about the legacy platforms and whatnot, a lot of their emails don't make it past firewalls of some of the residents that I would have, because they just so happen to be using their work emails, for example, or there are people who are just have a very sophisticated system for themselves personally. And so those are important emails that they sometimes may not get. And it sounds silly, but as a building operator, I might be telling people I've got window cleaners dropping down the side of the building, close the shades of your bedroom. If they don't get that email, then I'm in for a horrible phone call later. And what I go back to, I sent the email, fine, it covers you, but somebody's upset now.
No, 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 no. Trust and verify, right? Like
Right.
you trust and verify. So what I'm hearing is, it's been on your shoulders to bring tech into your property, and to leverage that, and grateful that you've met Lindsay, and you're going to continue to leverage more and more of her product, or her team's product, which is awesome. But you, as your group, right? Your resident managers, I imagine, get together on a periodic basis, maybe monthly or quarterly, and you talk about various things that are going on in the industry. Maybe you're talking about like pain points that are going on, or new local laws, or whatever the case may be. But they're all kind of operational, meaty things. During those conversations, do you ever bring up your pain points? And is there ever any opportunity for you and your colleagues to speak directly to an IT team within your group so that there's
Yes and no. We're not all, we may all work for similar companies or the same company in some instances, but every building is just so different. Like as Lindsay said earlier, the ecosystem is, out of all the buildings I've managed, there's things that would work in some and definitely do not work in this one. And
Mhm.
but it's got to be case by case, I think. So somebody else's pain point, no matter what address or fancy address, or whatever, it may not be mine. So there's a, and then it goes back to the whole thing of, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? So you get that legacy platform, you get property management as it's always worked. And I think we said before, it's one of those industries where the more growth you get as a management company, I guess, the more inefficient you get because you've got X amount of managers. Now you're just saddling your top managers with more buildings, and you create the system where you bring in junior people underneath who are just keeping their head above water. And it's the resident manager or the manager at the time is sort of leaning more on their board or their building residents to get involved with the technology.
Yeah, that's be really candid with you. That's a shame because even though properties are all different, you've got different personalities, you've got different infrastructure and architect, all of that. You're absolutely right, but there's still baseline things that work for everybody. And the reason that I think it is really kind of critical that uh, the voice of operations meets with the ears of the technology team is there may be technology that's already in your corporate stack that can
Yeah.
address your issues. Conversely, there may not be, and it may be an opportunity for your team to have a voice onto. Here's the point, and this is what you need. You very very eloquently said where you were talking about some folks that had pitched you ideas that they thought would work in the real estate world, and you were like, no. You had shared a story with one time of somebody who invented a means of tipping, right? Like it was going to be a tip app, and you're like, no, we don't ask for tip. But the point is, that, and you have that knowledge, and you have the building operations knowledge, and your people knowledge, and that voice needs to be heard so that the folks in tech can bring you better stuff. Your Lindsay's product is really, really great here on creating this communication funnel, but it's not doing a full work order, right? It's not going in and that data isn't being stored so that you have that later for a little bit ironic, right? Because the little irony is like that data is needed for more AI down the line of having predictive maintenance. So it really is critical to have those conversations. And I'd encourage you to just pitch it to your boss. Hey, I'd really like to sit down and see what we could do, because I think that there is umbrella stuff that makes sense. I think, I mean, I know you're an excellent resident manager. We've talked enough, and I've been in the industry, and as is Lindsay, and you've got it customer first, get the team focused, coaching such. So I know you are. So you've got great things to add. And I'm I'm stammering a bit because it bothers me that you have all of these different applications that aren't gathering data into a central repository to be used to help you, to help your building, to help your owners. And offline we'll have a chat because I've got to help you. It's trying
Yeah, well, it is interesting. There's like a platform I use. I think it's called, you guys might be familiar with it. I think it's called eMoney, where you can get a snapshot of your bank accounts, your investment accounts, and all of this. It's like maybe somebody's invented it. I just don't know about it. But is there one for prop tech where it's like, all right, I can jump in and out of this app, so that work order I generated for one thing, and my logs that I was taking on this one, a story can be told where it's like, this thing's going to be a problem because it's been trending this way in the wrong direction for performance or energy usage. And, you know, good engineers and whatnot will be aware of the fact, if your amperage is going up in a motor, then that's sending you signals, and whether they're applying current transformers or whatever it is to watch it. But it's just something that is able to create the story and tell you as the user that
Lloyd, there absolutely is. And what you're talking about is that's data, and is visualization data. So you like platforms and using things like Power BI, where you can have a dashboard of your property and what it's looking like, open work orders. You could have financial ops, HVAC. Just can go down a list of all the things. So that actually exists, and that all of that is all the more reason to get all of that things, to get yourself. It's a dashboard is what we're talking about, but that's data visualization, and that does exist. Again, I love the fact that there's a centralization, and a resident can just pick up their phone and make a text or make a call. And one thing that we didn't mention is, and I think is worth mentioning, is, Lindsay, your product is multilingual. How many languages?
That's right. It's got dozens, and I feel like that list just keeps growing. So for the voice, it's dozens of languages. And then for text, you name it, right? I think, obviously with text, it doesn't have to interpret, oh, I think you're speaking in this language. It can kind of read the full text of it. But yeah, for, there's a number of things that power all of this. You have to be able to transcribe what's being said, send that to the AI, have that interpret what that is, and then have that come back and say, I think that this is, Spanish, for instance. And then it's basically saying, I'm going to now read that back in Spanish to this person because I think that's what they're speaking. So there's a lot of really funky and fun logic that goes into making that happen.
What I'm going to put my user shoes on this one is how do you ensure that as you're going through and testing that it's 100% accurate, and there's not going to be a snafu and embarrassing for somebody or insulting?
Yeah. I mean, I think as long as the library that we're using supports the language, then we should be in good shape. On that, some of them, there are going to be some languages that are not supported, and we've trained our agent to basically say, I can't support that. I don't know that language, but what I will do is it will say, I'll have somebody on the team follow up with you on that. And that way, at least they can either figure out if they have somebody that can support it, or they can move to a written form of communication where you can have the translation software running there.
Oh, got it. So the voice, got it. So
yep. So it'll basically be very explicit about the limitations.
Does I didn't realize that. So your voice agent can speak the various languages?
Yep. Yeah. So we've got a few different languages kind of within our team. So we test it on a number of things. And funny, my partner is Australian. He tested it on, he was like, speak to me in Australian. And I was like, there's no way it's going to be able to do that. And it did. It switched to an Australian accent.
Wow, really? That's kind of
fun.
That's
so
really fun.
Pushing the limits on that every day.
So we've got about 7 minutes left. I think I'm going to turn the tables on. Lloyd, money, sky's the limit. What don't you have today in your tech stack or tools for yourself? Let's stick with communication because Lindsay's here. What communication tool, or let's even go with this, your front desk and concierge, what tools do they have that you can't easily right now just switch them over to Super? What is it that you'd like to see centralized with you?
I mean, probably going back to that dashboard idea where you're just getting everything. I mean, one of the things we touched on before when we spoke was talked about these leak sensors that people have put in, and although I get it's a fantastic idea and everything to place 2,000 sensors around your building, there's no like second action to it where it's like, all right, what level of water is this? Am I waking up Mr. whoever it is at 2:30 a.m. because he's got a little condensation on his floor? I mean, will he appreciate that? I mean, granted, flood, we all know, 5 alarm fire, take care of it, but it's at what level is that? It's just more sophistication in these things. I think we're just scratching the surface of everything we're about to get into. And so I'm excited to see where it goes, but who knows where it'll go. But for starters, that dashboard idea of just integrating your security system, the security system running reports on things for you. It's not just relying on human intervention to watch every camera or might miss something or miss one email. That it's just, I guess, a great assistant, I guess, is what I.
So you'd like to have your access control system, right? Your security
Yeah,
system.
just everything, one control system, or like rather than logging into different programs, you log in remotely to your IT room to get onto your, different systems. Just
Yeah.
have it all right there. That's where I guess under like, I know you're saying they exist, but just one like master system where you're interchanging, almost like your iPhone, where you have different apps, and I'm just going in and out of systems where I can, and they are alerting me to things more importantly.
So your dream is to have a single sign-on platform and get to everything you need.
Yeah. I think it makes absolute sense. I think there are companies doing it. I mean, I mentioned like ETS and guys earlier, but I guess, you know, there's companies out there, say like JLL and CBRE and all these things. They
Yeah.
are taking those platforms and applying because they have a uniform approach to how they manage everything. Or like Prologis, I imagine, are have something very sophisticated. Where we fall off is that we're individual buildings owned by individual corporations or LLCs and things, and there's a basic management application applied to how we run these buildings, but then within that application, there's individual buildings with their own needs. So some people don't have door automation, they don't have staff, they have different challenges to the guys with the 80-story towers and multiple entrance points and things. So it's just getting it across that line where we can have that collective bargaining or whatever, collective purchasing power, where we can take these technologies and buy them individually and apply them to our own buildings.
I think you can, and I think you can still have variation in what tools meet different groups or different properties. But there's also baseline systems that'll have APIs that you can work to connect, and or like we talked about, of like platforms that kind of sit in and sit as kind of the middleware for bridging that gap. So those exist.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what do you think? What's your dream for Lloyd?
I think one of the things that we are thinking heavily about is that concept of can every staff member have their own like personal assistant, right? And one of the things we've been working on building out is actually we've got agents that you can teach to use other software platforms. So that's been an interesting way to think about, right? Having essentially AI assistants that can have logins to things, that can go and gather information or go and push information into places so that you don't have to go and do all of that manually. But that allows you to do so in a way where even if that system does not want to share their data, even if they don't have an open API, even if they don't allow you to easily access and kind of share that information, is there a controlled way that you can actually have some of this work? And so I actually think we're not, that's not too sci-fi of a future where you could go train a personal, each team member could have their own personal assistant. You train it on 5 different pieces of software that you want it to use and the actions that you need them to take in the workflow, and it can take it from start to finish. So I'm very excited about the opportunities to just keep building on those types of things. And that's like kind of what we see is like the communication is often the entry point to that, right? It's the intake for how you learn about the thing. Now there's maybe there's 2 to 3 more steps that need to take. How do we kind of keep pushing further down the funnel?
Wow. That's good. By the way, I was reading an article today, and I think it was by Microsoft, and they actually call those organizations frontier organizations or something like that, where it's going to be people and agentic staff, and you're responsible for your agentic staff, but that's throughout the organization. I think That's amazing. But we're out of time again.
Goes by so quick.
Goes by fast. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lloyd and Lindsay, and thank you all for joining us today on Request. I hope that you enjoyed and got something out of it. And please feel free. I've got up on the screen, there's Super's URLs in that QR code if you want to check out what Lindsay has to say. Lloyd is on LinkedIn, and he'd be happy to talk to you if you'd like. Well, maybe.
If you've got a good idea.
Yeah, coffee.
Bring them to Lloyd.
Thank you all. Peace.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Good seeing you
Michael.
both.
Have a good one. Bye.